And in this visit to the zoo, Binturongs from the pool, because when I saw this animal, I was amazed at this animal because it's such a big animal. And when it goes on your shoulder, I was like so scared about it. And I love animals, and there was such a furry and a cute animal. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to share the video with you. So let's go ahead and look at this really, really cool video, and you are going to love it. So let's go ahead and play this video for you.
Hi everybody, my name is Maggie and I'm an animal care specialist here at Brookfield Zoo. I know many of you are at home and missing some of our animal ambassadors, so we're going to take this opportunity to bring the zoo to you. So today we are going to show off one of our animal ambassadors and one of his very special adaptations, his prehensile tail. We're also going to be talking about how tails tell a tale, talk about how many animals have very special adaptations with tails. Let's head on over to Nicolette and Sandy, our Binturong. So many of you may have seen our two Binturong animal ambassadors, Sandy and Sheba, and learned about a lot of their really cool adaptations. They're from Southeast Asia. They live high up in the treetops. So they have really special grippy feet that help them climb up in trees, but notably their coolest adaptation is their prehensile tail. So you can see that tail grabbing onto Nicolette's arm. So prehensile is a really big word for grasping. So he uses that tail to grab onto branches. It provides him with extra support up in the treetops. He can also support all of his weight hanging with that tail. So we're going to check him out hanging around on our enrichment tree right now. So he might not use it all the time, but he's going to use it to provide him support as he's moving around. You'll see him grab on here and there. Nicolette's going to ask him to scoot around, but he has an exceptionally powerful tail. So this is one of his most helpful adaptations. Right now, Sandy weighs in at, Nicolette, how much does he weigh?
15 kilograms.
15 kilograms. So he weighs right around 32 pounds. And he is going to weigh upwards of 40 pounds when he is full grown. Sandy turned a year old in January, so he's still growing. His sister Sheba, she weighs 40 pounds. So she is full grown. She's 2 years old. So he has still a little bit of growing to do. But even at that 40 pounds, he can use that super strong tail to support all of his body weight. So Sandy is just one of 3 of our animal ambassadors with this unique adaptation. So we have 3, as I mentioned, in our ambassador program, but they're all very different and unique, but they all share this really cool tail. So we have our Binturongs. We have another one that you're very familiar with, our prehensile tailed porcupine quilvert. And then we also have our Tamandua. So that's our lesser anteater. You can visit them when we reopen our buildings in the front of Hamill Family Place. So they all have this really unique adaptation that helps them survive up in treetops. But other animals, and I want you guys, while you're watching this Facebook Live, to think of other animals that have really cool tail adaptations and how that might help them out in the wild. So these 3 species that we have in the Ambassador Program are found all over the world. Binturongs are found in Asia. Our lesser anteaters are found in South America. That's also where quilvert is found in South America. Now we have one species of mammal that's found here in North America that has a prehensile tail. If anybody wants to write in and guess that animal, they have a really, they have the same kind of tail that these guys have, and they use it to hang in trees. So if anyone can name that animal. So please feel free to shout out any cool animals that have really unique tails. Here at the zoo we have snow leopards that have a really long tail, and that helps them for balancing in the rocky terrain that they would live in the wild. Cheetahs have a really long tail that helps as kind of a rudder when they're running really fast. We're all familiar with a rattlesnake, uses their rattle to deter predators and maybe mark where they are. So if someone passes by, really loud rattle. So animals use their tails in lots of different ways for hanging, communication. So all sorts of different ways animals use their tails. But today we wanted to highlight our prehensile tailed animals. So Sandy right now, he's been participating in his training session. Nicolette's been asking him to climb all over his tree. He's been showing off his tail. Sandy has been trained since he was just a few weeks old. We hand raised him here at the zoo. He's been part of our ambassador program since he was 3 weeks old. And like I mentioned before, he just turned a year this January. All right, so we're going to give Sandy some of his diet. So we talked a bit about him living high up in the treetops. So some of the foods that he's going to find that he lives up in the trees, he might eat some leaves in the trees, fruit. These guys are seed dispersers out in the wild. So they eat fruit and then they disperse the seeds that they eat in that fruit when they poop it out, and then those seeds grow into trees. So that's a really important job that they have out in the wild. So he's a really big frugivore, but then he also eats meat. He's checking out one of our other keepers walking around. All right, I think we have a correct answer as to what that North American animal with that prehensile tail, and it is a North American opossum. Very good. So we have a marsupial that lives here in North America that has a prehensile tail, and that's an opossum. If anybody didn't hear that, if I was standing a little bit too far from the microphone, that was an opossum. They're found here in North America, and they have a prehensile tail. You can check out what Sandy might be eating in his bowl. He is getting some meat, and he's getting some fruit and vegetables, and he's also getting biscuits. Now, those biscuits provide a really complete diet for him here at the zoo. It's kind of similar to you giving your dog food. That gives them the complete diet, but he is specialized for tree-dwelling animals that eat leaves and things like that. So it really gives him a complete diet. But for training, Nicolette was offering him his favorites. So he's going to get fruit, banana. I think he's getting some strawberries today, apple, all sorts of things that are really high-value items for him during his training session. But it's really high value for him to sit at the end of doing all his behaviors and just chow down on the rest of his meal. All right, well, I want to thank everybody so much for joining us today and spending time with Sandy here and one of our animal ambassadors. And I want to remind everybody to stay safe and visit us every day at 11 a.m.
Hey, so this was our visit to the here we were able to view, Sandy. We were able to, and I wanted to bring over here another, activity. So I was unable to find an activity that would go along with Sandy. So I brought in this activity. This is an activity that is a reading comprehension one. And this is about Opossum Surprise. It's just a reading comprehension story. I will put it on the side of the YouTube channel. This is going to be something that you guys can look into. You can talk about it. You can read the story. And it's about an opossum, which is kind of the same class. And after that, there are some reading comprehension questions in here. With this story, you can adapt it as per the level of the child. You can also do some other activities of, like making flashcards of an opossum and of Sandy, matching colors, doing sorting of animals after this activity. There was another activity that I came up with, which was, as for animals, I came up with sorting game. And in this sorting game, I had come up with all the animals from the brown bear book. I was just doing matching samples here, sorting. And then I was also doing counting with different, animals. So there are many different activities that can be done with this after this video. And this story goes about like, it's Grandpa, Grandpa, come quick, shouted Tony. There's a huge rat in the woodpile. Grandpa got up out of his chair on the back porch and laid aside the axe he'd been sharpening. He sauntered across the yard and came to a stop next to his young grandson. Tony pointed to a small gray animal that had backed itself into a corner. It bared its mouth full of sharp pointed teeth and hissed warningly at the two people. Grandpa smiled at Tony's mistake. Tony was fresh from the city where rats were a common enough sight, but here in the country they were not so visible. That's not a rat, said Grandpa. That's just a half-grown opossum. Oh, possum? Grandpa nodded. That's a little one that was probably born this past spring. He has evidently adopted the woodpile at his home for the time being. Shouldn't he be out hunting for his food? Asked Tony. He's not sick, is he? Grandpa shook his head. That looks like a fine, healthy little opossum. Opossums are nocturnal. That means they are active at night, they sleep during the day, and right now we're giving this youngster nightmares. Come on up to the house. It's getting a mite warm out here, and I could use a tall glass of sweet tea. Grandma got them both a glass of sweet tea, well filled with ice cubes. The two went out and sat on wooden rockers overlooking the backyard. Grandpa took a long sip of his drink and then sighed. That was just what I needed now. What are we discussing? He asked. We were talking about the opossum, said Tony. Ah, yes, possums. Some people say they are one of the ugliest animals on the continent. Do you know they have 50 teeth in their mouth? They can have a nasty bite, but would prefer to just be left alone, said Grandpa. Have you ever seen one pretend to be dead, Grandpa? Asked Tony. Grandpa nodded. Sure did. I had an old dog once that started a possum. I thought the animals were dead and was going to bury it. I picked it up by the tail and was really surprised when it started wiggling. I didn't know that when an opossum is afraid it faints. Tony laughed. After that happened, I wanted to learn more about them, said Grandpa. What else can you tell about possums? Asked Tony. Well, let's see. They are mammals like us. They also like to eat, just like everything available. That includes old fruit and vegetable, eggs, bugs, rats, mice, poisonous snakes, and roadkills. Ew, said Tony. That's really gross. Yes, but it's an important job. They help keep the environment clean. Another interesting fact is that they are marsupials. They carry their babies in a pouch. They are the only marsupial native to North America, and they are relative to the koalas in Australia. I guess the possums weren't at home when looks were given out, said Tony. Grandpa nodded. They sure aren't much for looks, but they are useful, and that counts for a lot. So here's the story, and then there are some questions that go along with it. So, you guys can go over these questions with according to the level of the child. You can draw a possum, you can draw Sandy, you can do the differentiation between Sandy and an opossum. What is the size difference? What is the color difference? And all those things. And I just hope that, whatever we talked about that might be helpful to you in this time when the kids are cooped up at home and the clients are at home. I wish you best of luck. Stay safe.